So hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, and good evening. My name is Yuval Tene. I'm a team leader in Priority Software. I'm excited to be here today with you in this webinar. We will focus today in Priority REST API, and the purpose is to show you a new world of options opened using this technology. We will go over some prerequisites before you can work with the API. The main part of the webinar will be a demonstration with the different requests and demonstration for different type of operations you can do with the Priority REST API. We will see some new features. All the demonstration I will be using Postman application, and I invite you to send questions using the chat, and we will answer those questions at the end. If there will remain questions that we won't answer, we will send individual emails to those who send those questions. Before we begin, I would like to tell you a few words about Priority. So Priority Software, we have 75,000 customers around the world, 9,000 of which use Priority. During 2090, 70,000 new users joined a Priority community, and in the last 5 years, the company showed 3 times growth. We have offices in 3 countries except Israel: US, UK, and Belgium. And finally, Priority was announced by leading analysts, IDC and Gartner, as an innovative, modern, and flexible ERP product. And Priority appears in lists of leading ERP systems around the world. Let's start talking about Priority REST API. And first, I want to make a short, brief history about Priority. So until version 17.1, we had two types of main interfaces. We had the client server, the old client server interface, Windows client, and we also had the web client working over using browsers over the net. In addition to those clients, you could use a procedure generator in Priority to create simple HTML web pages for MarketGate. And for exporting, importing data from and to Priority, Priority supported EDI, table, and form loads, which are still being supported, of course. REST API is a known architecture, and it's well known today, and it's in vast use all over the world, and it's used to it supports data transfer over the network. And Priority REST API for reading was first released in version 17.1, and it extended Priority support for reading data from priority over the net. In the next version, 17.2, we extended the support also for writing data into priority forms. Priority Web SDK was released in version 18. Here in Priority, we understand the major importance of the connectivity between Priority and other platforms, and Priority REST API was developed to support the increasing demand of this connectivity. And during the last few versions, we are working on new functionality, and we have developed a few out-of-the-box integrations between Priority and other systems, such as digital banking integration. Here in Israel, we have integration between Priority and one of the leading banks. We have developed the payment portal. In the US, tax calculation using Avalara. Also in the US, Play to load bank pages from different banks in the US. And finally, Zapier that allows connecting Priority with thousands of applications to generate automations. In addition to the above, you can find many ready-to-use connectors that were developed by other software companies, connectors that help integrating Priority with the increasing number of leading platforms, e-commerce, BI, MES, and more. And we, of course, encourage our partners and other software companies, our customers, to develop new integrations using the new technologies. So what you have to prepare before you can use Priority REST API. So first, you have to install a Priority application server. Next, you will have to obtain the license that supports API operations. You will have to acquire API module, API users, and if you want to use a REST API for writing data into Priority, you will have also to get transaction bundle for writing and updating data using a REST API. You can find detailed documentation both on REST API and Web SDK in our GitHub, prioritysoftware.github.io. So you can find there also the prerequisites and documentation on REST API and Web SDK. To create a successful integration, it's divided into you will have to in order to have a successful integration. So first, a detailed planning of the integration should be done by someone who has good knowledge both in Priority and the other platform that has to be integrated. You will have to specify the relevant processes. For each process you want to integrate with Priority, you will have to identify key data that should be transferred from and to Priority, and of course which forms participate in the integration. Then choose the technology you will be using. you might be using both technologies also, both REST API and Web SDK to achieve the integration. And finally, use Postman to check every step and every API request that you want to create. And finally, don't always take into mind security. Let's make a short to see the difference between REST API and Web SDK and what each one of them is mainly used for. So REST API is mainly for application to application integration. Every operation is based on a record level, like priority form interfaces. File upload is not supported using with the REST API. And programming language, you can use whatever programming language that can generate HTTP requests. Web SDK is more often used to support internal processes in priority, and the Web SDK allows to access data that is returned by triggers like choose lists or search lists. You can use the Web SDK to execute triggers both on the field level or the record level. Uploading files can be achieved using Web SDK. And programming language is JavaScript only. Okay, so far I used the PowerPoint. From now on, I will start using Postman, and from now to the end of the webinar, I will be showing you some features you can achieve using Web SDK. So the first request is a request called service route, and this request will return you all the entities that are part of that priority installation. Okay, all entities, all priority forms in the installation that we are to which we have make the request. So you can see here all the priority forms, suppliers, log path, and so on, all the forms. Important note is that not all those forms can be accessed using REST API. To access a form using REST API, you will have to flag that form in the system maintenance menu. So let's see system maintenance and software license. And here, and limited access / API forms, you can see which forms will be available for REST API. So not all the forms are can be accessed. Only once you flag the form, it can be accessed using REST API. Okay, so the next request will be to get metadata of the system. The metadata returns a list of all priority forms, and for each form in the system, it will display both form columns of that form, the keys that the form column keys that are used to access a specific record in that form, and finally it will also returns a list of sub-level forms of that form. For example, if we search for the entity suppliers, so you can see that the key column is SAP name. Here you can see all the columns, form columns of the vendor's form, and at the bottom you will see the names of all sub-level forms. And if you want to see the structure of a specific sub-level form, you will have to look for it. Sorry, without the subform, like this. Okay, and here's the entity of one of suppliers' subforms. Okay, so these were two basic requests. For the next examples, I would like to illustrate a fictitious portal that may be used both for vendors. For example, if we want to create a portal that our vendors can update their statuses of purchase orders, or for internal users, for example, our purchase a person in the organization. Just to mention that in this example we won't be dealing with it's a fictitious illustration. We will show a simple flow, and I'm not going to go over issues of UI, UX, and so on. And also, we are not going to deal with the question how the user logs into the system. We start all the demonstration once a user is already logged in into the system and can create the request to priority. Okay, let's go back. So the first request will be to retrieve from a specific form. The request is of type GET, and using this request, first you have in the request, but also in the previous two requests, we need to put, of course, a username and password. Both are specified in priority users form, and the user should be flagged as an API user. And here I want to get all the suppliers in my system. And the result is in JSON structure. And in this request, we have all the suppliers in the company that I did the request. And all the suppliers and for each suppliers, all the columns, all the data for each supplier. Now, if we want to filter, we can use, we have two types of filters. The first is by the key of that form. So here I use I will access the supplier's form using the supplier number value. Okay, so I received only that specific supplier and all the columns of that supplier. Okay, so just a second. Okay. Okay, the next request will be I will use the filter parameter. So in this request, I want to get all suppliers that comes from the United States. So we use the filter parameter, and then I mention the form column name in priority, in this example, country name, and the operator EQ, and the value that I want to filter by. So the result will be all the suppliers from United States, country name United States, and so on. Okay, we have a few in this environment. Not always we want all the fields from a form. So we can mention also the fields that we want to display to receive in the result. Okay, so in this example, I used again the key filter, and I asked priority to return only specific fields from a supplier's form. A few words about the language, how to determine the language that the priority will return messages back to the as response. So in the first priority will return all the information messages in the base language. So here, for example, I want to make an operation that generates an error, and in this example, we receive the message in Hebrew. But if I want to change the language, I can add the language code in the URL that I create the request, and the language and priority will return the error in the requested language. In this example, I want to receive the error in English, American English. I can change it to British English or Spanish 5. Okay. Okay, let's continue with our demonstration. Let's say we want to update some data. Okay, we have a special form in our website that we want to allow users to update, our vendors to update some specific columns in priority suppliers form, and For this purpose, we have the patch command. One important thing that I did not mention in the beginning, REST Priorities REST API supports OData. So everything here is also documented in OData documentation. So it's not a language that we invented it in Priority. It's a well-known usage in REST API web-based applications. So in this example, I want to update our suppliers and I want to change few fields. Okay. So before that, I would like to show you something. Let's say that I have an error. Okay, so country name, the value does not exist. Okay, so in order to identify which countries I can use in my patch command, you can use a request to get list of countries. Okay, get command for countries form and select the relevant columns from a countries form. So this request returns all countries in a countries form, and you can also use the filter to receive shorter list according your needs. Okay, so in this example, okay, updating, we cannot update a country name that does not exist. So we go back to the list and we get the correct name. And we can, let's use a different name, United Kingdom. And the result, if no error occurred, we receive back the updated record in Priority. We can, if we open Priority, okay, so just to see how it reflects in Priority. So this is the country, and let's change the city, London, and so on. So everything reflects directly in Priority. To create new record in suppliers form, we use the post command, and we have to specify all the fields that we want to create for the new record. So here we will give the new vendor a number and new API demo supplier, and we'll assign to branch B1. And once we send the request, we have it in Priority. And let's see, sorry. Okay, so we have few suppliers. Let's create a last one, 6. And here's the new record. And like we saw before, if we try to send a bad request, so we immediately receive back the error from a priority, and it's just like working with the forms interfaces. Okay. We were talking about knowing the system. So this example illustrates what I was talking about. In this example, I want to delete a supplier, okay? And of priority does not allow to delete. In some form, we prevent deleting records. We can use a specific program to do so in those forms that we have such a program, like here, or we can use the status to assign a cancel status to records. But we cannot just like that delete a supplier or a sales order or whatever it is. So again, for a good you have to know your priority and to make sure that you know you are familiar with the processes in priority. So we received an error that we should use a program to delete a vendor. As I mentioned before, we cannot execute procedures from a REST API. If you still want to run procedure in your integrations, you may use a Web SDK, or you can customize a special a form or add functionality to existing form to help you to achieve these operations you want to create. For example, you can create a new form that receives some information, and that form will run all the logic that you want to achieve. For example, in this example, we can create a new form that will receive the supplier number, and the form in the post insert or post update trigger will run the procedure to delete that vendor. So this is another way to manipulate the lack of ability to run procedures using REST API. Okay, let's see some extended examples. So far, we retrieve data only from one form. Let's see how we combine between how we combine requests also to get information from sub-level forms. So in this example, I want to get list of parts that are linked to that to our supplier, and we receive all the information from the supplier form and also from the parts per vendor sub-level form. In this example, I mentioned specific columns that I want to receive from the sub-level form, but I can also get all the columns from the sub-level form. Okay, if we don't mention specific fields, priority will send back all the all columns. and we can ask priority to retrieve from more than one sublevel form. In this example, we ask retrieve data both from part per vendors and contact persons of that supplier and text assigned to that supplier. Let's have some information inside. So vendor contacts, my contact. And if we go back to the request, so you will see, sorry, okay, I have to change the vendor. And here is records from sublevel form and so on. In order to update the sublevel form, you will have to access the sublevel form with the key of that form. So in this example, if we want to update a subpart sublevel form, we can go back to the metadata and by access the key of the sublevel form is kline. So if we go back to the request, let's see which items we have for our vendor 001. So we have two items, kline 1 and kline 2. So to update one of them, we'll mention the value of the required kline. Okay, so this is the result. Okay, and let's change the supplier part number from 000 to NNN, and this is the result. And if we go to priority, of course, again, this is the vendor. And this is the vendor part number. In the same logic, you can add new lines to sublevel form. In this example, I want to add part number 0011. And here we have it. Okay, so post command. Delete. In this form, we can delete lines from parts per vendor sublevel form. Sorry. Okay, and I got an error since it exists in another form, in another document, so we cannot delete that line. So let's see what we can do. Okay, let's see which kline. Sorry, get suppliers. And so let's delete kline 3. I will delete kline line 3 that we just added. And if we go back to priority, we remain with 2 items in the parts per vendor. Let me get skip ahead to and go over new features that we have in version 20. So in version 20, we improved text manipulation in using REST API. So first, we improved all the text manipulation. We added new features. For example, I can write text in priority text forms with signatures. Okay, so let's open the purchase order. Purchase orders. Let's see that purchase order. And let's see the remarks of that order. Okay, so this is what we did right now. I can use the append to add lines to existing subtext form. And if we go back to priority, oh, sorry, I was inside the text form. So, okay, this text is being used by API demo user, but now we succeeded. Okay, so we can append and we can use the signature true false. Okay, we'll just delete the signature attribute. Okay, sorry, again I was inside the text form. Okay, so here this is the line without the signature. Okay, and we can, if I delete the append, so new line, just make sure. Okay, and the result, new line without the signature. Another feature in version 20 is batch operations that we can create using REST API. Until version 20, if you wanted to send more than one request, post request, you had to make a number of requests for that purpose. From version 20, we have the batch operation in which I can, in the same request, send more than one commands to priority. And this command is to open goods receiving vouchers. I'm not sure that I have. Let's check if we have the purchase order ready for that. Okay, so this is the first one, ends with 2, and the second ends with 3. So let's just change the status of those purchase orders. Okay, let's change the status to authorized. Okay, let's go back to Postman, and I will send the request, and we receive 2 new GRVs documents. And if we go back to priority, we'll be able to see those the new documents. Inventory. Okay, so this is the new documents that were opened by using a batch operation. Another feature in version 20 is the since operation. Let me find the example. Okay, 19. Okay, so in this example, we can retrieve records that were changed after a specific time, and this command can be is relevant only on forms that have a BPM, and it's based on the statuses log of the documents. So here I want to access documents that were changed after May 19, and this is the result. Using Postman will help you with your integrations, since Postman have a built-in functionality to create code in different programming languages using the code button. You can receive the HTTP request in many languages. Whatever language you use, I'm sure you will find it in the list. So this is why we will always use Postman to generate all the requests, and to use the functionality of Postman to help us to code the request in the different languages. I think that will be my part with the demonstration, and it's time for questions. And for that, we have today with me Leo, VP R&D, that gathered your questions and will answer them. So
yeah,
thank
hi
you
everyone.
very much.
I've been answering questions the whole time via the chat. So if there are any additional ones, now's the time. Okay, looks like
no further questions.
No further questions. So okay, so here's a question by C about using data in keys. So I believe we have an example of that in the documentation. Let me see if I can find it. One second. So in general, I want to recommend looking through the documentation. We really try to have everything there written down rigorously. So let me find that one. Querying fields. Yeah, so there's a specific section in the documentation called filtering a collection dates. Let me put this in the chat area. Okay. So to whoever asked, this is the specific documentation for filtering a collection and dates, and then general documentation. It's the same link, just without the part at the end. I'll stick that in here as well. Okay, there you go. Oh, okay. So for a key, yeah, it's possible to add specify specific records by their date. I'll look up the documentation and send it later. Okay. The limitation on 68 characters for text, no, there's no such limitation. You send in the text and we'll handle it on the server side. Yes, Anil, we're constantly updating the documentation. See, I'm not, and I don't understand that question. Sorry. Okay, guys, so thank you very much. Yuval, thank you. It was really great, really informative. I also learned a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's see, to your question, it's the same as the SQL definition. Yes. Third-party XML. No, it's just JSON, the way that we document it. So no. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your participation. Yuval, thank you again, and thanks a lot for organizing it. It was really great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.